This
So it
conference
must
will
be-
now be recorded.
Okay. 4 o'clock, we're calling it to order, and I'm just going to call the roll real quick before we do the pledge. And that is our district attorney, Tony Pierce, is present. Supervisor Tinkle is present via computer. Supervisor Banks has not joined. Is that correct?
I'm here. I'm here.
You are? Okay, so you're online.
I am.
Yes. 4:01 p.m.
Supervisor Feinberg is online, Supervisor Guy is online, Supervisor Flaherty is present, and our district manager, Chris Shoemaker, is present. So let's start with the pledge, and then I'll turn this over to Tony. Okay.
To the flag
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, liberty and
Justice for all.
And do we have anybody, Chris, any residents that want to make any comments? I guess that's the next thing on the agenda.
No, there are no residents present. No one signed a card to speak, and the online audience is limited to the supervisors, Danny and Stephen Bloom.
All right. Mr. Turney.
Oh, and Russ is here in the audience.
Okay. Tony, I'm not turning it over to you because these are your items.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And for the record, this is a continued meeting from the meeting of July 2nd, 2020. And I appreciate the board's consideration and indulgence for the adoption of 2 resolutions to continue the process for utilizing the revised assessment methodology for this year's budget. And the first one, Resolution 2020-12, and I appreciate Chris providing it to the board. And also one additional item that I left off in paragraph 6. I think the red line version went to all the board members also. And the purpose of this is a resolution that declares a special assessment. This is a result of amending and revising the assessment methodology. So we're going through an additional notification and resolution process. And the first one talks about what the costs are for the coming year. Those 2 numbers in paragraph 4 come out of the proposed budgets that have already been approved for purposes of setting the public hearing on August 20th. This ratifies and confirms the board's approval of the assessment report, which is Mr. Wyer's 2020 report, revised assessment methodology. It also provides that there's a public hearing to let interested persons provide comments and as to the manner of payment, the type of assessments, the amount thereof. Now, at the public hearing on August 20th, 2020 at 6 p.m. It also directs the providing of notice of the public hearing in accordance with statutory requirements and publication of this resolution in the newspaper and attaches to it Russ's report. And request that the board approve the adoption of Resolution 2020-12 with the amended paragraph 6 that adds that the June 11th, 2020 approval by the board of the assessment report is hereby ratified and confirmed.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve that?
Yeah, there's 2 separate resolutions that do need to be separate. Okay.
Question?
Motion was by Mr. Tinkle, and is there a second?
Second.
Mrs. Flaherty has a question.
Mrs. Steinberg, is it all right if I ask my question?
Go ahead, go right ahead.
Resolution 2012, it says that we have approved the methodology, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so that if we say we do not like the methodology, we disapprove this resolution. Is this correct?
That's correct, and then we're back to the prior old assessment methodology. The board's already approved it back in June 11th.
Right, but we don't all have to approve it.
If you don't like the resolution, you don't like the resolution.
Thank you.
Tony, you were muffled on that. I didn't understand it.
If someone wants to vote against the resolution, they have that right. The board did approve the revised assessment methodology on June 11th, and again, for purposes of this resolution, it ratifies the corrective action. That sets this notification process in motion.
Any other comments? Chris, would you call the vote?
I'll call the vote on resolution 2020-12. Supervisor Flaherty,
No.
Supervisor Guy,
Yes.
Supervisor Banks,
Yes.
Supervisor Tinkle,
Yes.
and Chair Feinberg.
Yes.
Thank you very much. The next resolution is,
What's the total on the vote?
I'm sorry?
What was the total? What was the total on the vote?
4 in favor, 1 against.
Say it again, Tony.
4 in favor, 1 against. The motion is approved,
Okay.
and the resolution is adopted.
Thank you.
The next resolution is one, again, reiterates setting the public hearing to be held on August 20th, 2020, for the purpose of hearing public comment on proposing a special assessment. That's 2020-13, and then references the recent, just the fact we just adopted resolution 2020-12. And again, it talks about advertising, and there's a separate notice requirement in here about the 30 days written notice by mail in addition to the advertising. In this motion.
I have a note.
Resolution
Yep.
is, ordered.
Excuse me.
This is just to approve the,
This sets the public hearing for the budget hearing and the assessment hearing for the special assessments to be levied and imposed.
I'll make a motion to approve for the budget hearing, for the hearing.
We have a motion to approve, a second.
Second.
Any comments, anyone? Chris, if you once again call the vote.
Okay, I'll call the vote. This will be a vote on resolution 2020-13. Supervisor Flaherty, Supervisor Guy,
Yes.
Supervisor Banks,
Yes.
Supervisor Tinkle,
Yes.
and Chair Feinberg.
Yes.
And that motion carries 5-0. Resolution 2020-13.
Thank you all very much. And Madam Chair, I think Mr. Tinkle, at the beginning of the meeting, wished to discuss or address an issue or an item with regards to what can happen in the budget process.
Yeah, Tony, thank you. This gets real complicated with this new assessment methodology, and I just want to make sure that we are all on the same page. In the past, when we have set a budget, the dollar value, let's say we just hypothetically made a budget of $4 million. That resulted in a budget of X dollars per single family user. We no longer have an assessment methodology that's based upon just single family. We have single family, we have multifamily, and we have commercial. Tony, my question for you is that if we approve a budget of, let's say, $4 million going ahead, and then we change that budget later on to, let's say, we move 100,000 out of stormwater into administrative, or better yet, 100,000 out of admin into stormwater. That has significant impacts on the rates of the commercial, the multifamily, and the single family. What controls the amount of the budget or the amount of which one of those rates can't go up or down? Because if one goes up, another one's going to go down and vice versa. How does that work going forward?
and Russ could clarify or correct me if I misstate, but in resolution 2020-12, there's a preliminary assessment rule that's been adopted. And that's for purposes of the public hearing, which people can comment on, object to at the budget hearing and public hearing on August 20th. And then the board can, sitting as the Board of Equalization, make adjustments to those assessments for the parcels, depending upon any comments or objections received. There is a top number, I'll call it, O&M assessment number per property or per parcel in that preliminary assessment roll. That number cannot be exceeded. If you change cost centers, change it from administrative roadway, and say that reduces the number of the assessment, then that's okay. If that goes from administrative to roadway and it was to raise the assessment above the level in the preliminary assessment roll, you cannot do that. Is that correct?
Okay, I want to make sure I want to make sure everybody understands that. So if we would take at the August meeting and decide for whatever reason, we would want to pull out, let's say, I'm going to just make up a number, a hypothetical, $200,000 out of stormwater and put it in admin, and that raises a single component's cost, we can't do that.
From the operation and maintenance side, not the debt service side, and Russ can address that.
Yeah, for the record, Russ Wire, your methodology consultant. One thing to understand is it does affect the assessments across the board. Really, essentially, you have three sets of assessments. You have the single family assessment, you have the multifamily assessment, and then you have what I call is the commercial assessment, but the commercial assessment is individual on all of those parcels. So if we have, 50 of them or 60 of them, whatever those parcels are, they all have individual assessments. And they will move, if you move money from, like, say you move 100,000 from administration over to water management, that may lower the single family, it may lower the multifamily, but it may increase the commercial. You couldn't increase the commercial. You could lower those other two, but you couldn't increase the commercial. What you would have to do is offset that with additional funds to make sure that you still get back to your equal budget, because that's what the assessments are saying.
Okay, Russ, you hit exactly, you hit on the head exactly what I want to make sure all of our board members understand, that while we can do it, it would necessitate us taking money from our reserves to offset the difference.
Yeah, the negative part of the assessments, Mr. Tinkle.
Yes.
Or the other thing, if you decide to reduce your budget, let's say it's 3.8 million now, and you decide to reduce it by 200,000, you're fine with that, because all the assessments will go down at that point.
Yeah, no problem.
But if you're moving them within those three compartments, the roadway, the water management, or the administration, you have to be careful when you try and do that in August. So the key will be going forward is that you really take a hard look at your budget when you're doing your preliminary budget approval, so that you're all in sync and say, yeah, we think this is it. This is really where it needs to go. So that the only thing that may change when you get to August may be some sort of oddball thing that comes out of the blue, but you're all set to go at that point, unless you're willing to make that change and finance or fund it from somewhere else.
So the bottom line is, I just want to make sure everybody that's aware of, we can do it. The issue is if we're going to raise it, and that has a ramification of any one of those three assessment groups, we would have to offset that with some other injection of funds that would avoid it going up.
Avoid the portions that are going up. You need to bring those assessments back down to what you approved.
Gotcha. I just want to make sure everybody understood that, because that was a little confusing under this new assessment methodology, but I don't even think it's an issue, but I just want to make sure that we all talked about it.
The key is the high water mark for each of the product types, land use types, is what is contained in the preliminary assessment roll. As far as the operation and maintenance assessment for the forthcoming fiscal year.
Correct.
I agree. That's all I had. Thank you.
Understand. Any other supervisor comments?
I have one comment. Mr.
Go ahead,
Banks.
Mrs. Flaherty.
I want to thank Mr. Banks for the survey and for putting them out to all the employees, and I hope that he has received them all back. Thank you.
Yeah, the due date on those is this Friday, and Laura, the new business manager, is collecting them. So as soon as I receive them, correlate the results, I'll bring back a summary.
Thank you
But
again.
thank
Mr. Guy, any comments?
No comments, Madam Chairman.
Mr. Banks, anything else?
No, ma'am.
And I have none. So with that in mind, I am going to adjourn this meeting. It is 4:17.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.